computer science majors in the Bronx at Lehman College.
Wow.
Really talented students that are working like other jobs, and some of them have kids, and just like really resilient folks that were getting failed by the system in so many ways. So I thought, how could you use microeducation? Well, Jake thought, how could you use microeducation type of principles to engage students in regular practice? So that's why it's called Algo Daily.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we've thought about is, how do we build community around this? How do we get students to use this on a regular basis? Bootcamp grads. So a lot of customer acquisition and like iterating on the product. We just had a release. I want to check it out. There's some new updates on the site. Would love to have folks try it out, and I'd be happy to talk to anyone who has any feedback.
I love that. By the way, for those of you who are just joining and tuning in, please know that we're talking to the phenomenal Daniel Adeyanju, who is a product lead with Algo Daily, a passionate educator, community leader, and builder. And we've just been talking about education, the future of work, and also what you can do to take control of your career and start building networks, genuinely building networks, so you can find that career opportunity. Daniel, I would love for you to share a little bit more about the books that you've mentioned that you've really loved, that have helped shape your perspective on the future of work, but also community building as well. You mentioned Start With Why by Simon Sinek, which is a phenomenal book. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. What were some of the other books you shared?
I mentioned Simon Sinek. So I mentioned Start With Why specifically. Hooked comes to mind. I'm blanking on the name of the author. I got to interview him recently. Hooked. Who's the author of Hooked?
Yes. Yeah.
So I really liked Hooked because it was like a simple framework that you can use for anything. So I love like having that Swiss Army knife of ideas. I really liked Essentialism.
By George McCown.
By George McCown. Like he really did a good job. And I think a gentleman, I think he's his brother. And I think I asked him, and I think he said that he's his brother. Greg McCown had a really good book that he sent my way. I think he sent it your way too. The Innovators book. I mean, I thought that was just like a product when I'm looking at a book from a product perspective. And this is like the way that it was bound and the way it was super simple. It kind of just presented all these different ways to come up with new ideas, which I thought was really awesome.
Yeah. You know, with everything going on in the world in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and, protests, due to the killings of George Floyd, and also what we're seeing as a focus in public health care, due to COVID-19, what do you think are some of the huge opportunity areas and problem areas for entrepreneurs to start building, the next big company around, the next Slack, the next Salesforce? What are your thoughts?
It's a really great question. And I'll be honest that a lot of my thinking has just been so laser focused on education. I did try, I don't know how hard I tried. I tried to divest myself from education, but it just can't stop chasing me. So I think there's a huge opportunity in learning. I think our education system is quite maladaptive to the current moment. And it will be really hard for that system to change, to adapt. There's just so many things that are betting on that, too many systems that are relying on it. And there's a need for people that are creating new paradigms that depart from that old paradigm and prepare people better for the future of work. So I think learning, like what you're doing is really awesome around micro-learning, which could span enterprise to span enterprise to pre-K, right? Going from you're in a big corporation to like you're just starting out. I think online learning is going to really ramp up. You're going to see what happened with enterprise software with a Slack that said, no, like this should be beautiful, this should work well. I am astounded when I see kids software that has poor UI. I'm like, that's all. I mean, you had one job to make it look nice for these kids, to make sense, for it to be intuitive for them. So I think education technology is going to be huge. I think especially if it can be tactile, there's often this like divide between the physical and the digital. How can you bridge the gaps between those things? I do believe that education needs to become more and more hybridized. And if you have something that bridges that gap, you have like a toy that kids are using at a pre-K, for example, and it's at home, but it has a digital aspect, and like the data is getting fed back, and there's some sort of interactive element and evaluative element that can help folks understand where kids are at. That would be really cool. And even as in the same breath that I say that, and I geek out about, kids can be at home learning. Parents need to be at work a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
I don't think everybody's going to be at home all the time. I don't think that's not what we mean when we say work from home revolution, right? Like, you should have the flexibility to be at work on Monday, be in an office on Wednesday, right? And that office might be the office. Maybe on Thursday, you're at a coffee shop or a WeWork or some other space that you can be at. Now, a parent's at WeWork, right? They're working from not the office. They should have a way for their kids to get taken care of. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in childcare as well, and just making sure that people have the optimal environments to do their work. So there's going to be like a benefits change. There needs to be flexibility in benefits so that people can customize their package to fit their lifestyle, so they can bring the most value to customers. I also think like the importance of soft skills has just really, really increased. And teaching soft skills is something that, soft skills are already soft. So it's already hard to say, it's not like teaching coding. It's like, hey, I'm gonna teach you this code. You're gonna right? Teaching soft skills is something that's a bit more amorphous. I think folks that can figure out how to do that and how to do that at scale and how to monetize, they're going to add a lot of value to the ecosystem, because we're getting to the point where you need these soft skills. It's not like a time where you could just like apply online and then, it could turn into something down the line. Like even just having a conversation on digital, I think folks need to learn how to become more engaging. I think teachers online and offline need to learn how to become, or it would behoove students if educators became more dynamic and better presenters and better storytellers. So I think there's a big opportunity in teaching some of those soft skills. The chief of them that I think about being storytelling.
Yeah. And people, I think, often forget the power of storytelling. And I've talked to so many business leaders and, educators and people who work in the workforce. And that is a chief skill that allows you to stand apart when it comes to building community or inspiring people. The ability to really go into a narrative that actually that ties back to something purposeful. For you, how did you develop that skill of storytelling throughout your career?
That's a really great question. I don't think that it's something that I consciously went out and studied. And that's something I do want to ultimately learn more about, in a more formal setting, not necessarily, through books and things like that. I think I've seen it in the church, just like, growing up in the ministry, really growing up that was a startup environment, starting a church from scratch and seeing it happen. There's a lot of storytelling in that realm of things. I used to love reading as a kid. So I think my vocabulary was super developed by the time I reached high school, because of just the sheer quantity of books that I'd read and the stories that I'd read. And I was super into fantasy. And I think fantasy is the chief to storytelling, because you're creating new worlds and new contexts, and people are following what's happening in these worlds that they've never been to. So I think a lot of that was cultivated through reading. And then even I mostly read business books now, but the best business books are telling stories, and those stories are what provide some sort of permanence. And I'd say, like, working as a career coach for computer science majors at Lehman College, I came to see myself as I called it I was a vision caster, in the sense that I was presenting possibilities that would not be something that folks would, where at Lehman College would be necessarily aware of, or hard people to connect with. I think it's, you've always heard, you can't be what you can't see. I truly do believe that it's really difficult to be what you can't see. It does take some imagination. So I try to bring my imagination, but also the reality that I've seen, combine those two and inspire people by telling a story of, hey, if you take these steps and you explore these possibilities, this is ultimately where you can lead. So being a coach of any type, I think there's a lot of storytelling involved because you're imagining a potential future. You're co-imagining a potential future because it's not, it has to be something that they're interested in, and you are helping them map the pathway to get there.
I love that, man. I love that, man. Dude, so where can everyone follow more of your work, Mr. Be Great?
Man, I'm everywhere, brother. So here on LinkedIn is always a great place to rap with me. I'm on Instagram. That's my @name, @b.great, be.great. On Twitter as NYC Dan _. Yeah, I know my handles aren't consistent, but I try to be in every space personally about what I love to talk about. So if you're interested in product management, you're in the field, I would love to talk to you. If you are in the space of education, I would love to talk to you. As has been mentioned, I'm working on a few different projects. I like to dip my hands in several cookie jars, and they're all intersected around education and technology, and often are about technology education, which I do make that distinction. So would love to connect with you all.
I love that. Definitely connect with Daniel, Mr. Be Great, if you're interested in partnering and working with them as an ally in a lot of his different education initiatives. The last word for part 1 of today's episode goes to Mrs. Squires, Dana Squires. I do have a comment about storytelling. While I think it is good, but it is hard to implement in the public schools, in my experience in middle schools, what you can do is so prescriptive. Correct? What do you think about that, Daniel?
That's real interesting. So I'd have to think about this more to think about the last part. What you can do is so prescriptive. It almost sounds like she's saying that the schools limit the range of how they can implement things like storytelling.
Yeah.
I just think it's important to give them the space to provide storytelling. And I think many teachers do implement this, right? But just doing more of it, like, hey, act out a story about something that happened in history. So I think there's just the interdisciplinary nature. So if you study something in history, learn something about history, how do you go about and tell that story from a different perspective? Tell that story from a perspective of someone else. And some of these things, the great thing about storytelling and a lot of these soft skills is that they really interconnect. So storytelling, you can explore history and really understand deepen your understanding of that part of history. And at the same time, you can build empathy, that skill of stepping into someone's shoes, which I think is one of the great things about history. So storytelling can be done in so many different ways. I think folks telling their own story is going to be really important. Thinking about the why and the context behind the things that they're doing and why they're doing it. I think that's a powerful skill. A lot of times kids are kind of expected kind of just roll with the punches, just keep moving. But I think give them the opportunity to reflect and connect the dots is a really good way to exercise that skill. So really writing, performing, I think there's a big opportunity in video. A lot of these kids are already storytelling on TikTok.
They are
on TikTok. So, meet them where they're at. Have them create a TikTok story to tell a tell a story about something that they learned about in history or English. And again, there's just so much interconnection that you can go ahead and be studying history and at the same time be developing your digital skills, your digital marketing skills. So great opportunity there. Thanks for that comment.
Shout out to Dana. So I was kidding. The last word actually goes to our boy Cyrus Belsoy. Cyrus Belsoy, who says, I fully agree with everything you're saying. With that said, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on today's part 1 episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, A Guy podcast. What's your big takeaway for our amazing guy community, man?
Man, always be connecting. That's my motto. Always find opportunities to be around good people that are trying to be great. And that's going to elevate you. It's going to elevate your practice. It's going to elevate others. I think making sure that your practice and the things that you're doing are going to benefit people, that connects you to your work and it connects you to yourself, and connecting yourself with a community is just going to be, it's going to make for a much better existence on this earth.
I love it, man. Dang, we should definitely have you on a future episode, my brother.
Most definitely. Anytime, brother. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, man.
We want to see this guide app blow up. We want to see this guide podcast blow up. Be great every day, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for the motivation, man. Talk to you soon, brother.
Most definitely. Peace.
All right, man. With that said, that was part one of today's episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a Guy Podcast Live. Part two will be coming soon. But with that said, we're going to take a little bit of a break, get some water, get something to eat. My next guest is also a phenomenal engineer and product guy who's really active on LinkedIn. Emmanuel is going to share a little bit about all of the amazing engineering projects and products that he works on just on the side and the company that he works with today, where he's building and leading the future of work and working on cutting edge technology in the area of AI and machine learning and even blockchain. With that said, take a break. I'll be back soon, and peace, love. Talk to you soon. And we're back to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide podcast live. I'm going to be joined next by a really amazing guy and phenomenal leader and engineer. And he's someone that's a part of the guide community and someone that I followed on LinkedIn for quite some time. Emmanuel is a Master's of Science candidate at the University of Notre Dame, 2 times Google Cloud certified engineer, as well as Azure certified AI engineer. And more importantly, he's a rock star at the work that he does in his craft. Emmanuel, I would love to bring you on, man. How's it going, brother? Hey, man. We can hear you perfectly.
Hey. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly, man.
Yeah. So.
How's it going, man?
No, it's going great. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you tuning in from? And we're definitely noticing some technical difficulties right now.
I don't think I can hear you now, Tim.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Probably try to refresh and come back into the studio room, and it might work.
I think I can hear you now. Sorry about
that. Okay. Perfect.
Get on my side. Yeah.
No worries, man. No worries. How are you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. How have you been hanging in there, given everything going on in the world, man?
I think I have a strong support system. I have great friends. We have great discussions. So it's been the support has been good.
Yeah. And you're based out in New York, right?
I recently moved, but I've been based out in New York for like a year now.
Okay. Where you at now? Where are you living at now?
I'm in North Carolina. I'm trying to transition to college again. So this is like my little transition period before I head back to school.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome, man. I would love for you to share a little bit more about kind of your background, because you're one of the people within the guide community, and more importantly, that I've seen who are a rock star in terms of the work and craft that they do. Share a little bit about how long you've been passionate about technology and doing the work that you do.
Oh, yeah. So thank you for those kind words. I got introduced to computers when I was in grade school, let's put it that way. But I didn't know anything about coding, right? We all knew that I wanted to play games on computers. And at the time, I had an elderly friend who used to build computers from scratch. So that was my first foray into technology. So I got into technology not from a software point of view, but it's like being able to build computers from scratch and install, at the time, Windows XP and all the various variations of Windows XP on it. And so that's where my interest in technology came. I came to college thinking I was going to do math, but I was just advised to take a CS class, and that's when I got introduced to coding as part of the technology field. And I was fortunate enough from that time on, I was fortunate enough to have experiences in that merged both math and computer science. And that's what led me to enter the field of AI and machine learning, right? Yeah. So getting into that field as a sophomore through an internship is what I was like, oh, this is a field that I'm more interested in, right? Because the technology sphere is really broad and there's so many things it can do. But I think my internship led me to try to explore AI and machine learning. And since then, I've been trying to learn as much as possible and build as many things that I can so far. So.
Yeah. So share a little bit about some of the projects, because you worked on some really amazing projects that you've also open sourced and shared with the LinkedIn community as well as GitHub. So share a little bit about some of the projects you've worked on in that area.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I realized about me personally is that I learn best when I enjoy what I'm building, right? So, especially if you look at machine learning, there's so many things, so many applications of it. If you go to Kaggle, there's so many people doing so many other things. But I like to build things that I'm interested in, right? It doesn't matter if everyone else thinks they are cool or it's important or has a particular business use case. I just like to build things that I'm interested in because that's how I learn best. So I like culture. Culture is a very important thing to me. My traditional culture is important to me. So I always try to see how I can merge or bring that into the AI field, right? into the innovative space. So I like playing around with things like voice AI, like Google Assistant actions, Alexa skills, and I try to bring like traditions that I grew up with to those platforms, right? So like proverbs, like Anansi stories, I like to build in that space, and I also like to, again, I love reading, and so like I try to, like all the projects that I do, I try to merge like my personal interests with technology. Yeah, in a general sense.
And you're pretty passionate about education as well. So a lot of the, I've noticed about the projects that you do, they're really focused on educating too.
Yeah, so I think that is, especially the online learning, it democratizes education, and that's important because, again, that's what gave me an opportunity to even think about getting into a field like ML, right? Because there are people who are like providing all these resources that anyone could take advantage of. So that's where my passion is. Like, the more you teach what you know, you get to learn and understand it more. That's what I think. So being able to share what I know is something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about some of the projects that you're currently working on right now, probably maybe behind the scenes or are soon to launch.
So I think one of the projects that I really like is, again, I like reading a lot, and I used to like reading like crime fictions, and that morphed into like this love of like crime stories and like, criminal investigations. So I've watched a lot of documentaries in that space, and I recently I chanced upon like the Ted Bundy tapes, like all the tapes that he did, and so like I'm trying to see if I could build like, I don't have it all thought out yet, but like an AI for like criminal investigations, right? It can be end to end, it can be some version of it, but an AI for criminal investigations is an interesting topic for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want you to share a little bit more about, because given everything that's going on with the state of the world, right now there's a huge emphasis and focus around, police brutality, public health, and all of this new innovation around contactless solutions. What do you think are like problem areas or opportunity areas for the next generation of engineers or entrepreneurs to build something for?
I think that like having multiple voices in various spaces allows. So let me put it this way. This is the way I think of it, right?
Yeah.
That people face very unique problems and challenges that like only they face, and so it's easy for them to come up with solutions with, right? So like being able to have multiple voices at the table allows multiple solutions to the various problems. I don't know if that makes sense, right? So like having, what are the possible problem areas? I think that like the main problem area is like increasing multiple voices, especially in AI, the AI field, because with that increase, that will allow people to solve their own problems, right? So like, for example, the Google Translate API, it doesn't have one for my local language, right? And it's not because it's a bad thing. It's not like it's a malicious thing, right? But whenever they were building it, they didn't think that maybe people like me would want to build products in my, I don't know what they were thinking at the time, right? But if there were more people, that would allow who have created those things, that I would come in and then build products for my particular use cases, right? I think that's what I think in the general sense, but I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you think there's a huge opportunity thinking about how can we help organizations build more inclusive products that, that kind of are mindful of different cultures and, different markets.
Yeah, and different developers as well. So that like creating opportunities for everyone to build, right? So
yeah. So let me ask you, Emmanuel, when you got your start in engineering, do you remember the first project you worked on?
So for school or like for personal side project?
Either.
So I think so like the main big project that I worked on, and I'll never forget this, it was a project called the Black-Scholes application.
Wow.
It was a disaster, but it was like we had just done like a course on differential equations, and we saw that you could apply the Black-Scholes to like invest in. And so me and a friend, Jonathan, we're trying to think of how we can build a web application to predict the prices of stocks. It didn't work out really well, but we learned a lot. It was like just building something that we have no idea of, but we are like, hey, let's build this. And it was fun in the end. So that was my very first major project.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. With that said, Emmanuel, let me ask you, man, if you would wish anything were to change when it comes to related to the future of work or the future of education, what do you think that, we need to start paying more attention to?
Right. I think right now, like the democratization of education, right, is a thing right now. That means that like there was a time that you had to be a particular type of person to know a particular type of thing, right? But I think with the introduction of things like even guide, right, being able to provide all these resources to multiple people so that like we break down those barriers of entry would allow like talent to develop from anywhere and everywhere, right? And so if there's multiple sources of talent, that means like multiple people are solving multiple problems. That's how I think of it, right? So being able to have all those resources at the fingertips of everyone who wants to have them, right? And breaking those barriers down, giving access to everyone. I think that's what I hope the future of education is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's for us at Guide, that's the future that we're building, and we share that same vision as well too. Yeah. And it's also the future of work. There's a lot of integration between the future of work and the future of education, and really being able to change the system to be more accessible and more affordable. Emmanuel, with that said, man, I've actually shared your GitHub with the people so they can go check out more of your work. What's your big takeaway for our Guide community, man?
So I think a mentor of mine who gave me this mantra that I always follow, and I think I even use it as a hashtag, like always be learning, always be building. And I think what they made me realize was that like learning is a fun thing, right? I think I personally was trained to think that learning is about like passing grades, like it's this thing that you do to get an end result, right? But then my mentor made me realize it's a process, and it's an enjoyable process that if you allow yourself, you can grow by enjoying what it is that you're learning, right? And by applying what you're learning, as in the building part, it allows you to cement that knowledge and also to be able to help others understand what it is that you learn. So like it's a mantra that I've taken to always be learning, always be building. It isn't like a formal education or like a formal career or whatever, but it's just like that process of growing and developing and sharing what you've learned is a process, right? It's a cycle that keeps going and it never ends. So I think that the Guide community, hopefully the Guide platform comes out early so I can test it out. I'm excited.
Of course, man. You are part of our early beta testers that we're
so having that mindset, right? That like the learning process is almost like cyclical and it never ends, and it's not like this hard thing. Yeah. So just always be learning, always be building. Yeah. That's what I'll leave it.
Dude, always be learning, always be building. We should get that on a t-shirt. All right, man. Emmanuel, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the show, man. Thank you. Please, where can the people follow your work?
So again, I'm on GitHub. You can always check out the code there. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Emmanuel Champo. Yeah. So that's it, like very basic stuff. So
yeah, love it, man. Love it. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man. We should have you on a future episode, by the way.
Yeah. Everyone should get a Guide. Yeah. Everyone should get sign up to Guide. So
love it, man. Appreciate you, brother. Talk soon, man.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for today's episode. And shout out to Daniel and Emmanuel for coming in and sharing a little bit more about what they do and what they're passionate about. If you're interested in being a part of Guide App's early beta program, check us out at guideapp.co and sign up for our early beta program. We're going to be expanding our beta next week to a few select creators. So definitely check us out. If you're interested in being on a future episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide podcast, check out UTFOW.com and sign up to be a guest or a sponsor. We love either. And we'll feature you on a future episode. With that said, peace, love, and talk to you soon. Be well.